Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call our quarterly department heads meeting for April 23rd to order. First up, tax assessor. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning on a sunny day. My report pretty much speaks for itself. It's a little lengthier because we did complete the grand list, so we included some of the grand list detail. Changes to the overall tax base. I gave you the top 20 motor vehicle property owners, personal property owners, and real estate. There's an attached narrative about the revaluation and some of the details that we went through. And the other highlight that I just want to mention is that we do maintain the senior tax relief program until May 15th for taxpayers whose income for married couples under $52,900 and single is $45,000, including their Social Security. We need a copy of the front page of their tax returns showing their adjusted gross income. We also have a deferral program that taxpayers are eligible for with the income level at $72,900, but a lien would be filed on the town property land records. So we have, I think, about 12 to 15 homeowners that are on the deferral program. It's working really well. We're closely with Kathy. And the other highlight was that I've been asked to, a couple months in a row, meet with the Commission of Aging with Allie and Beth, and they've asked about questions about the senior tax relief program as well as the Veterans Exemption Program. And lastly, just last week I met with Westcog, who asked by state statute to receive quite a bit of the data from our assessment records. We've been releasing this data for over a decade with CoreLogic, Bankers and Tradesmen, the Warren Group, however you want to name them. So all 169 towns have released the basic fundamental homeowners data. So it's nothing that's surprising us anyway. It was a special act by the legislature last week to give it to the Council of Governments. So that's it.
Do you have the results yet of the tax appeals and its any impact on the grand list?
We finished the Board of Assessment Appeals. That memo has gone up to Jen, so we have finalized that, but I don't have that with me.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit less than we anticipated. The 5-year cycle, we typically have close to 250 to 300 hearings. We had less than that, so it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the overall impact to the grand list.
I'll get that to you later today.
Thank you. Mark?
You mentioned the firemen and emergency medical service workers property tax relief. Just for information, I'm not challenging it, but just for my information, I don't remember how much tax relief that is. Can you generally
$1,000 off the property tax, I believe, is what we allocate.
That's the max.
Yeah. How much was it? 80,000 total is the budget line on 80.
Okay. Okay, that's good enough. Thank you.
Good.
Tony, I just was on your detail page, which talks about the property exemption. Is that total category of 5.6 million? Is it growing, stable, or is it declining?
It's pretty steady, pretty consistent
steady
overall. Yeah.
Okay.
The homeowners tax relief allocation, I think we had up to 165, 170 at one time. I think we're down about 125 or 130 homeowners.
Okay. So it's been fairly stable, is
yes.
what you're saying. And the other, I noted your report in the back, which is very helpful, but by location, apparently some locations in town, the valuations went down more than others, and some went up.
That's not unusual for the 5-year reval cycle.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, if we did it every year, we wouldn't have the same dramatic effects. But
shift, right.
Overall, if you can walk to the train, there's a lot of stability in the marketplace.
Which speaks well for maybe the upcoming projects.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Anything else for Tony? Thank you. Okay, buildings, Pete.
Good morning. One thing, or a couple things I'd like to add to my report. I did lose my part-time inspector. The city of Norwalk made him a better offer. So I did lose him. It's a shame. He was a very good inspector, but I do have a new guy starting as of tomorrow. So I was able to fill the spot rather quickly, which surprised me. We also, at the end of January, kicked off our online permitting process for mechanical permits. And a surprising thing that happened that I didn't expect to happen, I'm getting a lot of guys pulling permits online that don't have to pay for them, but are willing to pay for them because it saves them time and the drive down when they're out of town. So even though when the mechanical permit fees are covered under a building permit, they're still paying for them because they find it much more convenient. So that was surprising. We also opened an Instagram account. We have 356 followers, and Lisa Mason in my office runs that, and I was very surprised. There's a lot of people who are interested in what the building department is doing. I'd also like to highlight a couple of jobs, quite unusual jobs that we finished up this quarter. The first one was 131 Hollow Tree Ridge Road, the storage facilities. It's a fully sprinklered building. It's 108,000 square feet. It has 868 units of storage. It also has 41 outside storage facilities for RVs, boats, and the like. It also has 130 kW solar array on the roof, which just about fully powers the building. And you have also a almost 4,000 square foot office facility with 2 living units for on-site staff. This project took just under a year and a half to complete. The other project I'd like to highlight is Parklands Drive. That was a very unusual project for us. 132,000 square feet. It was 105 living units, and it was a designed occupancy load of 1,741 persons. And this project took almost 2 years. And I'd like to thank the other departments, the fire marshal, the DPW, the health department, and zoning, of course, because without them, this project could not have got completed as well as it did.
Any questions for Pete?
Well, Pete, you're saying that the 102-bedroom facility can take 1,000 people, or has it?
Well, what the code does is the code takes the size of the structure.
Yeah.
And there's a formula in the code that determines maximum occupancy load. And even though I don't think they'll reach that maximum occupancy load, it's been designed for that. And that, of course, kicks off, sprinkler systems. They have emergency power generator system in the building. So it plans for a maximum load, even though that load may not be achieved.
Okay, so it's not like we're having 1,000 people in bedrooms?
No.
No, okay,
No.
got it.
No.
Didn't mean to be stupid about that.
It accounts for on-site staff and all.
And visitors and
as
all
well
that
as
stuff.
residents, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I really like that detail, Pete. Feel free to add that to your report in any of the projects that you're working on. It's very
Will do.
interesting. Anything else for Pete? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, post 53. Is Joe here today? Hi, Joe. Morning.
Morning, all.
Good morning.
Just one quick correction. I apologize on the first chart of the report. The 2019 volume should reflect 393, not 378. I failed to include the sporting event standbys that we do into the total number. So last quarter we did 393 total calls for service, 375 911 responses, and then 18 hockey standbys at the ice rink. Just a couple highlights off of the report. That resulted in 293 people transported to our area hospitals, 129 with the paramedic on board. 217 went to Stamford Hospital, 76 went to Norwalk. Again, we did 18 of the hockey standbys down at the ice rink. We had 3 calls that were handled by mutual aid services coming in when we were busy. 2 by Stamford EMS and 1 by Norwalk, and we provided 13 mutual aid responses into surrounding towns to help them when their call volume was busy. Our average response time, lights and sirens, was 6.6 minutes last quarter for our first response ambulance, and then getting the second and third ambulances out, 7.3 and 7.8 respectively. The in-town paramedic response time was 5.9 minutes, and then when a paramedic had to come from out of town, when our town paramedic was busy, it's 13.2.
Yeah.
Falls remain the most common call that we respond to, 74 in the last quarter, followed by traffic accidents, general illnesses, and the like. Our membership is strong, stands at 168. We just had an EMT class that finished, sent 20 people to the state for testing. So we'll have a new group of EMTs, primarily sophomores, coming on board soon once they get their state certification taken care of. And we've trained 133 people in first aid and CPR in the last quarter. Just two things I want to bring to your attention coming up. We have our Memorial Day Food Fair on Memorial Day, so please put that in your calendar, May 27th. And also, May is National Stop the Bleed Month, and we are doing training on May 19th. It's going to be a town-wide event held at Post for people to come and learn how to control life-threatening bleeding. So we'll talk about tourniquets and wound care and things. So it takes about 20 minutes to a half hour. There's a lot of hands-on, so we're going to encourage as many people as we can to come and get trained. Any questions?
Just a question on the paramedic response,
Mhm.
5.9 minutes. And maybe Ray can answer this. Are the Darien paramedics arriving at about the same time as the Darien Police's first responders? Do the police get there before you?
I'd say probably the majority of the time the officer is there first.
Okay.
They're a little more dynamic because they're mobile and in the cars most of the time. So, and then it really depends on the side of town, obviously, because the paramedic being stationed on the Norwalk line
Yep.
was able to get to many of the calls on that side of town much quicker.
Okay.
We average about a four-minute response time on medical calls.
Okay. That might be an interesting data point to add into our reports, if that's something that could be coordinated between Post
You can
and
capture that?
BDU.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
And Joe, maybe you want to mention that the Darien paramedics have had to temporarily relocate
Yes.
out
So,
of 701.
right. So due to the construction, it finally crept into the area where the paramedic parks the vehicle, and they were forced to have to vacate that building for a period of time. So we're going to host them during the day at Post 53. So the paramedic is there now during the day, and then at night they're going to relocate back to the Glenbrook Firehouse,
Where they had been.
where they had been prior to them coming into town. So we were told 12 to 18 months, I guess, is the rough time frame of getting them back.
Well, as soon as we can get.
As soon as we can.
The project completion might be longer than when we can get them back into the building. So
Right.
we'll keep close watch on that.
Yes. So, and we'll keep an eye on the response times there.
Perfect.
Go along
Thank you
with
so
that as well.
much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, Mark, emergency management.
Morning.
Good morning.
I really don't have anything further to add to that report. Any questions, comments, concerns?
What kind of information are you looking for in the MOU between you, the town, and the Red Cross?
So the Red Cross has a standard template they use for an MOU, and when people change, they like to have the MOU updated. So for us, nothing's changed. From the Red Cross side of things, they've had some changes in their staff. It's a blanket statement. It just says that while they're running a shelter, they're accountable for insurance and maintaining the building and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But it's something we've done several times in the past.
Didn't know whether that was significant. Thank you.
They hardly ever run a shelter, though, in town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we
correct.
thankfully don't have that very often.
Questions for Mark?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Finance, Jen.
Good morning.
Morning.
We are wrapping up the budget and getting ready for the audit. The Board of Finance voted on the budget on April 11th, and you can see in the report I have some information about the overall budget. The general fund budget is up 1.85%, but the amount to be raised by taxes is up 1.17% because we did have some additions to non-tax revenue. And the mill rate recommended by the Board of Finance is 16.47, which is a 2.43% increase. Our auditors will be on site the second week of July for their preliminary field work, and they'll be back first or second week of September for their final field work. And then everything outside of the day-to-day that our office is working on is focused on standardizing pay periods and payroll and processing improvements for payroll.
Excellent. Questions for Jim?
I have a question on the second page. You talk about performance measurements, especially with the payroll processing. Let's talk about the invoices paid electronically. It says year-to-date, 11.22% have been paid electronically. Do you have a goal or a target they're trying to get to?
No, because we just rolled this out. What I can see is that the first quarter we were at about 6%, and now year-to-date we're up to 11%. So we kind of put that on the back burner to focus on payroll, but as we have all of employee reimbursements on electronic payment, as we've gotten vendor invoices that have any electronic remittance information, we've been paying them that way. And then in the future, we'll do a concerted effort to reach out to other vendors and say, would you like to get paid electronically?
Okay.
So I would like to see that keep going up, but I don't have a target in mind.
No target yet, okay. And then could you just refresh us on what are the major goals in this payroll processing improvements that you're doing?
The main thing is standardization of pay periods. We've been able to get to that as the union contracts have settled. We're moving everyone to one pay, all pay types 1 week in arrears. We had base pay was being paid to date. Overtimes and special pays for one group had a 1 week lag, for another group had a 2 week lag. So we're trying to bring those all together. The last piece is the police department that just settled. They have the most pay types, so that'll be the most challenging.
Okay.
But we've targeted moving them to the 1 week in arrears 3 payrolls from now. So by the end of the year, we'll have all of those standardized. And then in terms of process, that'll allow us to process more efficiently on the actual payroll. But the other pieces we're working on is eliminating a lot of manual entry and overrides and really setting up the system to do a lot of milestone step increases, longevity, and be able to hit run. It'll go out and find them instead of us picking the individuals and manually entering them.
Okay.
Anything else for Jen? No? Thank you. Thank you for all your work on the budget.
Thank you.
Okay, Fire Marshal. Good morning, Don.
Morning, all. I don't have a lot to add. It was a fairly busy quarter. As Pete said, the project over at Parklands Drive was pretty much an all-consuming for, I'm going to say, a solid 2 months of the quarter, with final testing and final inspections and everything. Our hoarding, we're up a little bit. We added one. We're hoping to get rid of it fairly quickly. It's kind of an off case with the circumstance that the people that are residing in the house are having, and we think we can rectify it pretty quickly. Blight issues continue. You know, people will make their complaints what they feel is blight, which after we review it, the 3 that were done this quarter, none of which were blight. So, you know, complaints continue to come. We investigate and we follow up on the other ones. I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
I have a question. When you commented the inspection of play for Middlesex Middle School and the high school, what does that mean?
So the school play that they do, both schools do in the spring, we do an inspection of the stage. And
Stage.
yeah, all the setup and everything.
Thank you.
Yep.
With regard to fire alarm, false fire alarms, malfunction being 48%, is there a particular manufacturer or installer that we should look at and say, let's up the game a little bit, or?
It is the malfunction, it's classified as malfunction, but it is generally failure to maintain.
Failure to
than
maintain, okay.
So to follow on Kip's line of questioning, when the fire departments respond to false alarms, do they make notes about who the alarm system is that should be maintaining the system?
They do not. It is, the onus is on the property owner to
Yep.
make sure that their system is properly maintained
Yep.
Annually.
Okay.
And the other, under the malfunction, is also the contractor issue. the contractor setting off the alarms.
Okay.
Is the alarm ordinance still effective? Do you think, at first we had a lot of drop in false alarms, but
We're kind of hovering in the same numbers of, where we've been for a while. It'll never go drastically down.
Okay.
We're always going to have the issues.
do you get a lot of repeat offenders?
Not as bad as we used to. Every now and then you'll have somebody that's either away or whatever, and you'll get multiple calls before we can finally get it rectified.
I think we're thinking of reviewing the fines
Yeah.
Okay.
as an incentive. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Health, David. Is David here? No David. Okay. Lori, Human Resource.
Good morning.
Morning.
As you've heard, the contract with the Police Association was approved by the RTM last night. So now we have all three contracts have been updated, approved, and we're on a little bit of a staggered schedule now, with the Public Works expiring in 2020, the Town Hall expiring in 2021, and the police contract in 2022. So I think that'll help us in the future, negotiating one at a time in succession. We also, as you saw in my report, we had a favorable decision from the State Labor Board on the prohibited practice complaint that was filed by the Police Association in relation to the telecom dispatchers. I think that decision will be helpful as we move forward to hire additional dispatchers this fiscal year. That was good news for us. With our plans, and just projecting a busy May for Human Resources. We have benefit open enrollments coming up. We have 8 students from Darien High School coming to intern here. We also have some employee training coming up in May, including computer training. And we have the performance evaluation process for the non-rep employees coming up. And that's all I have.
Lori, what is lockout, tagout training?
I did not attend that training. Those were all safety modules offered, and that has to do with shutting off systems before the Public Works works on them. Don't know the details because I didn't attend that. Sorry.
Any other questions for Lori?
I'm assuming that on the last page that you're talking about substantial administrative efficiencies in the payroll is what Jen was referring to.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. That is a big thing for us. We had so many different payroll periods before, and to have every employee group aligned with the same payroll schedule, which will happen at the end of June, is a big efficiency, not only for finance, but for human resources.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Human Service, Ally. Good morning.
Not too much to add. I just wanted to highlight, if you look under the social service minutes per client chart, in March we had a significant increase, and that is due just to a handful of clients, believe it or not, 2 of which were in mental health crises and 2 families that were facing evictions. And it just shows how it really consumes, it's all consuming of Cynthia's and my time, just helping these people in crisis.
I was really impressed to read about the loan closet. I don't think I knew about
Yeah, that's the
that.
first time we've added it. I thought it was important to add because it's been constantly increased, well, not this past month, but it's been increasing, the usage. And I think we just need to get the word out there because it's a great resource for residents.
And that's what I was going to say, is maybe how do you get the word out there?
I
Is
think
it
we
on
need to
your
do more of it.
website?
I think it's in the Senior Center newsletter, and I believe it's in At Home and Darien's monthly newsletter as well, and we can certainly publicize it more.
That's great.
It's free of charge.
I know that person to person is aware that you have the loan closet. Do they help with clients that are Darien residents?
Well, when we recently cleaned out and had extra stuff, they did come and pick up a few extra items for
Okay.
themselves.
Okay.
Because we had a surplus. Because people donate them after they're done using them too,
A
so.
lot of times those are one-time use.
Exactly.
things.
Some are brand new, so.
Anything else for Alex? Thank you very much. Okay, IT. Good morning, George.
Morning. How are you all today?
Good, how are you?
Nothing much further. Just the systems for replacement within this town and the police station still going through. Servers are upgrading as much as we can. Slow but sure. Things are coming down the line with upgrades to a lot of the software because a lot of our vendors are expecting us to have up to speed with respect to all of the current operating systems and SQL for all our devices.
This might be a question for Jeremy. He's here today. I see that you are upgrading the CityView server.
Yes.
And are we looking at potentially a different software than CityView, Jeremy?
Yes, we're going to be talking to different vendors throughout the summer. At this point, we're trying to get the existing system running as best as possible. We'll have some training the first week in May, which really will enable people to understand the system better, be trained in it, and at the same time over the summer, just kind of seeing what's out there in terms of other vendors and possibly considering putting something in an upcoming budget if we do decide to switch.
Okay. This is just a matter of how much we invest in the current system.
Well, that's why we did pull the request, or tell the Board of Finance that they could cut the request for the going to online permitting for the full permits, because Jeremy and Pete decided to, after the experience of getting the mechanical up, they decided to take a look at what else was available because of the difficulties they encountered. So.
Okay, so we're on hold on further online permitting until you sort that out.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of the upgrades they were doing, I think it was just software upgrades. So I was working with them constantly in terms of just trying to get them on and making sure that things were running smoothly.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess it's just patching on the things that they have now currently.
Anything else for George? Thank you.
Okay?
Beth, Senior Center.
I know there's a lot of work. We go.
Good morning. I have nothing really to add except things that are coming up. Just to take the opportunity to say on April 30th, we're doing a collaborative program with At Home in Darien and the Alzheimer's Association on Healthy Brain, Healthy Body. So it's a prevention program and it's a complimentary lunch and learn. On May 8th in the evening, we have Dr. Verano coming from Yale to speak on a doctor's perspective on when it's time to use home care, assisted livings, and long-term care. So it's from a doctor's perspective. It's an early evening program. And in the fun category, in June, we're having our bingo extravaganza, which people are already wanting to sign up for, but we're holding off. And our numbers were very solid this winter because the weather was very kind to us and mild. So we had great participation and good, solid numbers.
So 2 questions from me. First, on your data, your numbers, your attendance and lunches, etc. Can you give this to us in this year's quarter versus last year's quarter?
Yes, we're working on that with some software that we're going to start to utilize so that we can show you in a graph form and so that you can see the past and the present.
Yeah,
yes.
I'd like to actually see the numbers too,
Yes.
so as long as that's on.
Sure.
And then can you tell us about bill number 7102, a little bit about that?
The senior center?
Yeah.
Bill, yes. Basically, they wanted to establish through, because now we have the Department of Disability and Resources and the Commission on Aging is just a subset of that, that there was going to be more requirements for senior centers to actually operate themselves in the same similar capacity. And it was going to have more oversight and more mandates without any support for those mandates, And the senior center directors, at least in the Fairfield County area, got together and put testimony together to be able to explain why that would not be something that we would want to do in terms of extra, and how different the 169 towns are in the way that they operate their senior centers. So that we would be willing, as a 14-town area, to submit reports and let people know that what we were doing professionally down this way, and then to talk a little bit more with them about if they want to do some unification, how to do it. Because not everybody has the same professional requirements throughout the state, so.
Do you know how it would have impacted you in terms of additional mandates from what you already do?
They would want our statistics as well, and then in terms of being able to look at how our staffing was, because they were also going to go there, what the proportion of staff should be to people that are actually in your facility. It just seemed like it was an overreach at the time, not looking at us, how each town is culturally and how each town is financially. So that would have been more of a burden.
Questions for Beth?
Was there ever any reason given for this bureaucratic outreach? Other than building a bureaucracy?
They're upstate. There was a desire to unify things, and because I believe that Hartford, in the Hartford area, they believe that they're more professionally run than some of the other counties, not us, but other counties, and I think they were trying to put pressure on. So I really don't, other than that.
You'd think they'd have bigger things to worry about.
You would think, yeah. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, Parks and Rec. Morning, Ken.
Good morning. I don't have a lot to add, other than I will just highlight that you may remember the last quarterly, I was talking about the timing of this security gate hut. And so far, all the timing has worked out. We've gotten approvals through ARB, ZBA, P&Z, and building. And I'd like to thank Ed and Pete and Jeremy. They've certainly seen enough of me in the last 3 months. And I'm certain they'll be happy to have some time off. But the building is built. As we speak, they are digging the trenches. The foundation will be put in place this week. And Ed has been grateful enough to work with our guys to do the interior of the building. So that's one of the last things that we'll need to get done. And I ran a report from July 1st, 2018 till today. And our department is up $98,000 from last year. So I thought that was a great number. Up in beach sales, up $65,000 in programming, and as well as some facility rentals.
Great. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the Reed Beach Short Lane potential project, or do you want to wait?
I think I want to wait.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to receiving a presentation from you and from hopefully our funding partners when the time is right.
I have a meeting with them on Thursday.
Perfect.
And then I think I'll be able to fully report next time.
Okay.
I was sort of surprised to hear about the vandalism of our signs at our parks.
Yeah.
And we're not going to reissue signs because of it.
No, we're working, our Parks Department has rebuilt the signs that they could.
Okay.
And we have a few that are offline right now that we'll have to have remade.
Okay.
We won't not replace them, we will. But, since I've been here, that's probably the most amount of vandalism. I mean, we've had some lifeguards' chairs thrown in the water, and we've had some things like that. But this is probably the worst that I've seen of it so far.
And our
Unfortunate.
Ray's here. Ray, do you get any reports about that? Vandalism on park signs?
We take occasional reports on it when they call us. Sometimes officers discover it. It's usually stuff that happens in the middle of the night.
Okay. Just to note, your Something Sweet, what a wonderful community event that was. Many different community partners, and I love that you had 312 people for your father-daughter dance.
Yeah, that was pretty great. Yeah, you can see too with the increase in revenue how busy that Jim and Jamie have been and how many new things that they brought to town. To have an increase of 65,000 from this year to last year is pretty terrific.
Thank you very much.
Mark, did you have a question?
Just quickly, the security gate hut is for weed?
Pear tree.
The pear tree.
We got rid of that old rusty steel building.
Well, I saw the rust, yes,
That
but I
taken
thought there
away.
was some concern that with flooding that we might have something with wheels on it or something elevated. I didn't know we were talking foundations.
It is going to be temporary, seasonal, if you will. So it will be taken away each season, which is
Okay.
much
Well, which
different
was
than
my
what we've
idea.
had in the past.
Yeah.
Not on wheels.
Okay,
But,
that's the way I think.
could be. We'll see how it works. But it's a slate foundation. I had to go to get variance on keeping. Otherwise with FEMA it would have to go up 17 feet, but that didn't happen. They approved it to have a slate foundation. And
Okay, good. Enough time on that.
But it won't be moved if there's a big storm coming.
Right.
Okay. So we'll have to see how it weathers.
Exactly. But if we knew there was a big storm coming, we could move it. Well, that's the glory behind it.
Okay.
It's going to be secured, but certainly it can be moved if we knew of something coming, which
Okay.
we wouldn't have done in the past. So,
Okay.
yep, it's not permanent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Planning and zoning, Jeremy.
Morning, just to follow up on what we were mentioning earlier about the CityView software, which we use along with the building department for permit tracking. We're going to have a trainer from the vendor come in May 7th, 8th, and 9th. Beth has offered us use of the Mather Center on the 8th for larger training, and the advantage of having a trainer come in directly from the company is they can sit down with employees one-on-one, try to find out what the employee is trying to accomplish, and make sure they're doing it the best way and that we're able to get the most out of the software we have. And that will help us assess whether that software is fulfilling our needs currently. The trainer will be available to go from department to department, so that's another advantage of having them here for about 3 days, actually 2 weeks from now. So we're looking forward to that, to really give us a better assessment of the software and give employees the most out of the system, which should be exciting for us.
Is there still the possibility that CityView will be the preferred vendor for moving us to online permitting?
It is certainly possible because it is certainly served us fairly well in terms of many of the things we ask it to do in terms of tracking permits, better communications with the contractors and property owners in terms of where their permit is in the system. It allows building department to generate certificates of occupancy fairly quickly and easily. It allows building to track their inspections. So there's a lot that the software is doing, but certainly we're always got our eyes open for better potential solutions. So Ina from the building department has reached out to other local communities and talked to them about their experience with their software. And so certainly we found that for the most part it's 2 or 3 different softwares that communities use. They have a different satisfaction. Each community is a little different. Many communities use the same software. Some are very happy with it, and others are not very happy with it. So it's really going to be up to us to bring in those vendors and see for ourselves, does it accomplish what we need them to do here in Darien, the way we process paperwork, and I think the expectations of our customers. I think people currently like the fact that we're able to email them when their permit goes from planning and zoning to building. I get a lot of good feedback on that. We're able to automatically enter the fees and track the financial information better, which is a benefit to Jennifer and to our department. So it does a lot of things very well. Maybe there's things they can do better, and that's what we're hoping to get in our training in May.
Okay.
How many years have you been using this, or how many years have all the people have experience with this in Darien?
It's about, I think, at least 10 years. What we find is there is some turnover, of course, in employees.
Right.
So you'll get employees who are used to this system leaving, new employees coming in. Sometimes the new employees have experience with other systems. Sometimes they don't, depending on the employee. Sometimes they catch on very quickly. Sometimes they don't. So it's a software we've been using for a while, but we're always keeping our eyes open in terms of something that might do the trick better, and maybe for
not substantial change in costs.
Well, it's a fair amount of time invested in this program,
Very-
or in
that's
this,
true.
in this service, which means you have a lot of built-in knowledge in the
Right.
town hall. Okay.
I learned a new word from your report. Columbarium.
Yes, the cemetery right over there is looking to modify the zoning regulations. Columbariums, where you put someone's ashes, because I also had to figure out what it meant. And so cemeteries, as more people are getting cremated, cemeteries are trying to find a place to accommodate that type of thing. So we've seen it mostly in churches in the past. The zoning regulations were only allowing it in churches. And of course, once the Cemetery Association pointed out to us, there's really a need to have that at cemeteries as well. Planning and zoning felt that it would be appropriate to change the zoning regulations.
Do they have the ability to place that building anywhere on their property, or do you have to approve that?
That would have to be approved by the local land use boards. They have not come to us with that second piece yet, but we expect that either this year or next year as they start preparing for that kind of change in their business model.
Thank you. Anything else for Jeremy? Thanks very much. Okay, police, Ray. I do want to acknowledge up front that we were surprised about Ray's announcement to retire. I think you'll have one more department heads meeting before you're actually allowed to retire, and we want to publicly thank you very much for all of your years of service, and really appreciate everything that you've given to the town of Darien, and we want to wish you well in your retirement.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, 35 years, so it's been a while.
A long time.
I was 24 when I started here. So. A little older now. Just a couple of things in the report of note. We are going to be giving promotional testing in May 15th, 16th, and 17th, a series of promotions for the ranks of captain, lieutenant, and sergeant. Through our vendor, BadgeQuest, they're giving those promotional exams. Then we have police commission interviews. I would anticipate that we'll have all the promotions done by the end of May. It's always an exciting time, police promotions at the police department. It's a little bit stressful for the guys. They put an awful lot of time into it, an awful lot of studying and preparation work. One other thing I wanted to note is we have one of our sergeants approached me, Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson, who's also a PhD, brought a proposal to me to purchase some sophisticated software known as RTM, Risk Terrain Modeling. And we purchased it, and he's going through a training process with this. It has to do with, it's a little more advanced than just crime mapping, but it hopefully, when he's done with this analysis, we can take our data and take a look at some areas in town that might be more prone or might be more at risk for crime. This program is more commonly used by bigger departments who have violent crime problems, such as a series of robberies in a particular area, or a series of maybe assaults or sexual assaults or drug dealing. But we're going to see if we can use it for our purposes, for our most common crime, which are overnight car thefts, overnight car burglaries. And if we can target areas of town that are at risk, then we can concentrate our patrols in that area and more effectively patrol those areas and maybe come up with some more arrests and deter some of these people from coming into our town. So it's 8 modules, 8 training modules. He's on training module number 6, and he's going to be filling me in on that as best he can. Sometimes when he talks to me, it goes over my head because he speaks at another level. But he's really good. We're very fortunate to have him take a look at this analysis, this type of stuff.
It's called
RTM, Risk Terrain Modeling. It's a program that was put together through Rutgers University, and he had some contacts down there. We were trying to figure out a way of thinking outside the box a little bit of combating this problem. It's not just concentrated in Darien, but throughout Fairfield County and Connecticut, and even nationwide, of these overnight car entries. And this might help us. Hopefully it will.
I know you speak to your colleagues, and you're Chiefs Association about this issue. Is this a similar protocol to what other communities are doing, or do they have other innovative ways of addressing the overnight car burglaries?
You know, we've discussed a number of different ways. We put some plans into effect, such as some task force working with other departments. These crimes are just so hit or miss that it's hard to concentrate on any particular night or group of nights to catch these individuals. And part of the problem is, as you know, even when we do catch these individuals, they're juveniles. They're 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And when they're caught, nothing happens to them. And, you know, we addressed at our last Fairfield County Chiefs meeting, we brought in some of our state reps and state senators to talk about the lack of sanctions on these juveniles and what we can do as a group to talk to the state about more severe sanctions and getting some more money into the juvenile justice system to hold some of these individuals responsible when they are caught, because when they are caught now, it's kind of a revolving door in the juvenile court system, and nothing's happening to them, which is a big part of the problem.
Don't you perceive that the justice system is actually going in the opposite direction here in Connecticut?
As far as juveniles go, I would agree with that, yes. They closed one of the main juvenile facilities up in Cheshire. That was closed, not funded any longer. And there's really no place in Connecticut for juveniles to go. They're focusing more on the rehabilitation, which we don't have a problem with, but some of these people, they're going through the system 4, 5, 6, 7 times before they're 18 years old. And rehabilitation is just not the answer in some cases. So there has to be some other alternative.
So if the Juvenile Review Board is successful for the things that we use it for here in Darien, is there the possibility of some kind of similar model for juveniles of this sort, that it's a higher level crime but yet doesn't fall into the category where the court system really wants to engage with those kids? Seems like there's a gap in service that we could be providing.
As you know, the JRBs are for very low-level crimes.
Correct.
And I don't necessarily know how that would work with higher-level felony-type crimes, a JRB type system. I'm not sure that that's the way to go with that. I think, we need something to be said about the old-school ways of locking them up for a little while and taking them out of circulation. I know that's controversial and probably not politically correct, but maybe I think that's the way to go.
It might not be controversial if it worked.
Right.
If it changed behaviors. I think that's the objective, is to change behaviors. And it doesn't seem like incarceration necessarily changes behaviors,
But it might be a deterrent, too.
Yeah. Okay, interesting topic. Any other questions for Ray?
I just have one question that we haven't asked in a while, and maybe for the next report. The body cameras, success these days? Are we having a lot of inquiries that you need to go back and look at any footage? We haven't really talked that much about any updates with the body cameras.
I wouldn't say we've had a lot. We've had some.
Okay.
We've had some requests from insurance companies, FOI requests to provide that information from accidents, a few from arrests. We don't get a lot of complaints against officers, but we have used them when people have made a few complaints here and there. And for the most part, it turns out our guys are doing the right thing. We do review them to make sure the policies are being adhered to. We still have a little bit of a learning curve with some of this stuff. We constantly review the policy with our people. But so far, it is a success.
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge that we have a great picture of Captain Lawler on the front of our report, and certainly want to thank him for his 34 years, and also acknowledge the retirement of Sam Bacuzzi. So we're so grateful for all the years of outstanding dedication to our town that you and your staff bring. Thank you. Okay, Public Works.
Good morning. DPW would like to
formally announce the winter is over for us.
Are you sure?
We pulled off the last plow yesterday in Salter. Just so you know, in the report it shows you we were way below average in our storm totals, 29 inches for the year. My first year here, I think we had over 60. But the average is around 37. So 16 events. So we do have some salt left over, and we were pretty fortunate on the use of our overtime. So, we did have a ribbon cutting for the solar panels yesterday. We got to take some pictures up on the roofs. The coverage was fantastic from our own channel 79 and channel 12. So that was fortunate. The last meter should be going in, I believe, at either the end of this week or beginning of next, so it looks like it's going to be turned on soon. And finally, which is not, it's in the report, but there's no name, and Kip was quick to point that out, and I appreciate that. The new facility supervisor started April 15th. His name is Anthony Campanella. He has extensive experience in facility management from work on the Housatonic Country Club to Planned Parenthood, their facilities. So we welcome him. I will be bringing him around to meet some of the department heads and take him through some of the departments, but I thought I'd give him a soft opening, if you will, before all the requests for services and work start to bombard him. So that'll take this week, the end of this week, to be doing that. And any questions you folks may have?
The pictures of the sewer pipes in this report are interesting. And can you just tell me what I'm looking at here?
That top of that pipe is grease
Okay.
that has, I want to say, coagulated.
Yep.
Just imagine arteries as they start to close down. Same thing with our sewer lines. We did take some time out on Mechanic Street to do some cutting that opened up that pipe. It seems to have been our problem. We sent a camera down there when the flows were quite low. Found that we were jetting it clean, but only 6 inches of the 12-inch pipe was getting cleaned. So we went through and cut all that grease out of there, removed it with the vac truck, and now that system seems to be working a little bit better. Knock on wood. The last couple storms have shown no increase in flows and elevation.
And accumulations of fats and grease like that, is that from residential customers? Is that from commercial restaurant customers?
I'm going to lean towards commercial a little bit more. The line that I just spoke of happens to be over by the Goodwife Shopping Center. We do have some restaurants over there that do generate quite a bit of grease. They do have grease protection that they're supposed to be using. We're going to step up our inspections over there a little bit more. We also have the rest stop on I-95 that comes across through there. We do see some types of debris that we shouldn't see in our sanitary sewer line when we do clean it. So we tend to believe that maybe over there we need to do a little bit more homework on what's getting in our line. So we're going to schedule some cameraing and some smoke testing done over there.
Does the health department, when they do their health inspections, inspect for the grease traps?
They do not. That is our job. Anthony Tacone does it from our office. We do it before they issue their yearly renewals for the restaurants in town, and Dave Knopf has been working with us on that this year. We held up 1 or 2 sign-offs actually in January until they had their grease traps inspected properly and up and running properly. So he was good enough to work with. That was the first year we did that. We went through 30 different locations, and we had trouble with 1 or 2, and they were quickly rectified in the beginning of January so they could open their place and continue to work.
And is one annual inspection enough to be able to catch the problems?
Right now, it seems that it's a little bit light manpower-wise, but I think once we get a process up and running with these folks and go to electronic submission of verification, if you will, they need to send an invoice of the work they've done on it, the pumping it clean, those type of things. I think it'll be something we can manage, but it's a little awkward right now and a little burdensome to Anthony's schedule, but we're trying to stay on top of it.
Thank you. More questions for Ed?
Ed, you just had a question on the gas service extensions. Could you explain resiliency? projects versus expansion?
Resiliency is them going back and replacing pipes that are either undersized or older and leaking. The majority of Darien's pipes used to be all cast iron. They'd go back and repair them. What they've done now is they put new plastic and they've abandoned the cast iron in place.
Okay.
The parts up at Hoyt Street from Greenwood and Camp Avenue, they ran it all the way up to New Canaan.
Yeah.
That was resiliency, but they upgraded actually a pipe and made it larger and continued it as resiliency/expansion. So they continued up into New Canaan.
So the danger with old pipe is if we're going to get methane leaks?
You will get gas leaks with the older pipes, and part of Pure's recommendations and requirements to the gas companies in Connecticut were that they put together a program to rectify those leaks. Some decided they'd go back and seal the joints. Other companies decided replacing the new mains with plastic was a better use of their funds.
Right. And then finally on the elevator repair, I read the words, but in a short version, you're not getting much help from the state on this one? You're getting resistance?
It's not resistance. They provided us with a design and implemented it with elevators that weren't suited to the outside. And when you throw the elements and salt at it, it requires great maintenance and some capital funds. We're putting in $150,000 worth of work right now to get those elevators back up and running. We had to replace sills and doors, mechanisms inside the vaults themselves. With that said, that should hold us over with regular maintenance for about 2 years. The state has helped us now by promoting a project for the platform replacements. They are going to include a redesign of the elevators and implementation of new hydraulics over the hoists and weight system now.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
I loved hearing about the Eagle's Nest and the fishing ladders. I thought that was a really nice point to put in there and, see how effective the work we're doing is having in our local environment.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Ed. Registrars.
Morning.
Good morning, Susan.
Morning.
John.
This is kind of our quiet time. We're trying to get caught up on a lot of education. Susan's taken courses. We've gotten to clean the equipment, and I'm really looking forward to shredding day because I have a lot to shred. We got permission to shred a lot of old ballots and everything. So we do have maintenance coming soon from the state, and I want a lot of room. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Susan, you?
You were going to talk about?
Oh, yeah. One of the things we've learned, we're tracking a lot of bills right now, trying to see what comes out of committee, what's going to pass once it gets to the voting. One of them is early voting. And it looks like in Connecticut we might get 3-day early voting.
3 days.
3 days. Now,
As little as 3 days.
Yeah.
That's going to be the minimum.
and of course the questions come up, since voting's on a Tuesday, is it going to be Thursday, Friday, Monday? Is it going to be Saturday, Sunday, Monday? Because cost starts to come into it too. So we don't have a lot of details. We've been promised by the Secretary of State that there'll be information on it, and it might go into effect for the next election in November.
And so when they're talking about early voting, does that mean you guys have to set up early, or is it early voting by the same mechanism of an absentee ballot?
It's almost like having a poll for 3 days. Yeah. And
We're not, that's a good question. We're not being told very much yet, so we just want to tell you what we have learned so far at our conference last week. And we think that it's going to be physical voting, but we're not 100%.
Maybe they'll allow it to happen in your office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because what happens is
We're not
those
positive.
right now the only thing I know is they are polling places for those 3 days, and we have tons of laws that govern it. Will it allow us to have it in the office, or do we have to have a separate location like we do now? So there's a lot of questions, like Susan said. Hopefully we'll have some answers.
If they did the no excuse absentee balloting, then it would make it a little bit easier. We could do early voting by absentee. But we don't know anything yet. But we do think that this will pass. We've been
Denise Merrill, the Secretary of State, was at our meeting, and she said that there's a big push from both sides in the State House to let this.
With no details on how they're going to do it, so.
Well, also, if we only, obviously we have 6 districts, but so hopefully they would let us just have this in one location, whether
Boy,
it be
we
your
hope
office.
so.
That's what we're hoping.
But if you think, I guess it depends what they do statewide, because obviously, Hartford or Stamford, I don't even know how many voting districts some of these larger cities have.
There's some, yeah.
31.
Yeah, the cities are really
29.
worried about administering that,
Right.
all the different districts.
But this isn't new. I mean, this happens in other states, so.
39 states have early
Yeah.
voting. That means 11 do not. So we're in the minority. Massachusetts now has it, and there's a strong push to get us up to date with the other.
Yeah, it was interesting. Susan found some facts. We have 800 poll sites in Connecticut, over 800. And that's the most in the United States as far as poll sites.
It's the most decentralized voting,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are lauding us because it means it's very hard for us to be hacked during an election. And there was a big discussion about electronic polling and versus paper ballots, and so many states are going back to paper ballots now. So we're in pretty good shape with that.
It won't change for a while.
All 50 states there were attempts in all 50 states to hack the past election. So they are really stepping up security. The Department of Homeland Security was there. They're putting in all this new software. We are now joining all these cybersecurity groups,
ISAC
which we'll
and
let
all
you know
these
about
acronyms.
soon. We just are in the process of forming relationships with them. So hopefully this will all work. In the presidential election, that's the one that we're really worried about.
I guess voter security is paramount
Yes.
importance, but I guess that's not an area that the state's willing to embrace, this idea of consolidations and regionalism, if we have 800 polling sites, right?
We do.
It's a big task, and the fact that we didn't get hacked and we look really good, I don't know that they're going to make an investment to change that too soon.
There are some municipalities in other parts of the state that are so small that could be regionalized. I doubt that if anything like that were to happen, I doubt it will happen within the next
But we talk about
major election cycle.
reducing
Yes,
from 6
yes.
to 3, even within our own town.
Yes,
right,
we weren't
as
going to talk
cost
about that today, but
Well,
we do have to we've been contacted by the state, by the organization who's conducting the census, and we have to give them some details about what we're thinking about doing.
Perfect. So
There's
will you
a
come
couple-
and report to the Board of Selectmen when you have?
Yes.
There's a
We're
couple
working
of
on
ways
that now.
to do it. Susan and I have to decide how many voters we want to upset. We could combine some districts, or we could just draw 2 lines and...
It's also the RTM. The
Yeah.
RTM is a major
Yeah.
consideration,
Yeah.
because it's in all 6 districts.
But we're working
so.
on a plan.
We'll look forward to your proposal.
Okay.
Yes. Anything else for John and Susan? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Tax collector, Kathy.
Good morning. How are you? So as of the end of the first quarter, we were just over 99.3% in terms of collection rate. So I'll have my work cut out for me the last quarter to finish strong. And I've already started reaching out to businesses, and next will be the real estate. So we'll really pound it and hopefully end at least as strong as we did last year. This month we are working on the second installment of sewer assessment, sewer service charges. So we're busy with that, and we're also starting to set up for the July billing. So that's it.
Anything for Kathy? No.
Thank you.
Thank you, great job. Okay, town clerk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I really don't have anything to add to the report, although last night at the RTM meeting prior to, 2 districts caucused, and we now have a full RTM of 100 members.
Wow, good.
Which is
Okay.
kind of exciting.
That is exciting. And I think we have also a new member of the Blight Review Board, correct?
We do another member to put forward to you folks for putting on. Yes, Anne Reed.
Perfect. Anything else for Donna? No. Thank you very much. Joan, Town Treasurer.
I just have two numbers that have changed. It's just the timing of when we get our numbers and when we do this report. The general fund is now $411,768.75, and the total town number is now $543,678.93. Nothing much has changed here. It was a busy quarter for me. Any questions?
That's through 9 months then?
That's 9 months, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's just the timing of when the statements get into Munis and when I have to write this report.
Right, I understand.
So,
Excellent.
The payroll simplification make things a little easier for you in terms of cash management?
well, Jen is cash management. What has come up as a question is our cash management. Some people think that it's the same every 6 months or every few months. It's not. Depending on when people get paid or when there are, like with the teachers, for example, get their extra payment in June. So our cash flows are not the same. That does affect investment income. Obviously, there's less to invest. There's also a slide because we get our money twice a year and then we're investing less with each month.
Right.
So, but, you know, anything that we can do to simplify our cash management always will help me.
Sure.
So.
What's your intern going to be working on?
I have a project that I usually give my interns, and the way I work my internships is we do some tutorials, like we talk, and then I take him to meetings or her to meetings, and then they do a project which is they get me some really nice charts off of Bloomberg. They learn how to work at Bloomberg over at the library, and some economic data, so my forecasts are more up to date, and they're involved in doing that. I feel very strongly when I have an intern that I don't want to say they carried Mrs. Hendrickson's bags, that they actually did something. So, you know, I'd like to get them involved and tell them what they're involved in, and it really is data for our budgeting. So, any other questions?
Do you expect your investment policy to be the same?
Actually, Kate and I worked on the investment policy that a long time ago. It was 14 years. We're doing it again, Kate. But Kate was the reviewer and helped facilitate that because I was in office for like 2 months or a month when I wrote that due to an audit need. And again, I don't know if you're familiar with the investment policy. It is my policy, but this time I'm going to work with John and Jen. So I expect it to be a little bit different. The real policy, it's probably the least, and I know this sounds weird, the least important thing that I have to do because the policy is dictated by the state. It's all by statute. So, but there are things that I put in my own policy of how I will do business and things like, and this is normal now, but if you want to do business with me, you come in my office. We don't have lunches. We don't have coffee breaks. We don't have anything. We have a business meeting in my office, or I go in your office. There's nothing in between. That's the sort of stuff that gets regulated by me.
Okay.
So, and a few other things. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that you're undertaking that project.
Thank you.
TVD 79. Jen, good morning.
Well, the bottom line is that viewership is up. And the best metrics we have of viewership on TV 79 are from our Vimeo viewers, which I think is where most people are watching us. And there's a couple of bar graphs in the report I sent to you where one of our staff members, who is better at Excel than I am, actually plotted linear regression charts to show the increase in viewership over the past year. There's some, kind of one-off meetings that may have helped contribute to that. The video we did of the cafeteria, high school cafeteria tour which got a lot of views, and we have a great new video up this week of the new solar projects that were ribbon cut yesterday as well, too. On Vimeo, we've just been able to add albums to our archives, so you're going to be able to go and say, show me all the Board of Finance meetings or all the Board of Selectmen meetings. And I think that will help with making the programming more accessible to all involved as well, too. The open rate on our program guide I checked this week is up over 30% now. It was about a 24% average over the quarter. It may be people are coming back from vacation and they want to see what's going on. We put a lot of work into that program guide with embedded links, and a lot of the things that people look at are not just the Vimeos, but they'll click on agenda so they can see what the agenda is for an upcoming meeting. We do have plans to come to you sometime soon, we hope, and look for about $3,000 from your reserve fund to invest in our latest capital project, which is to string fiber optic from room 119 to be able to do those meetings live. Increasingly, there are a lot of important boards that are meeting down there, and we don't have live capabilities from there, but we think we should, so people can watch them live and we can get them on the air and get them the audience they deserve. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jim?
Well, yeah. Is this a contest as to who gets which board or gets the most viewership? And if so, can we get a little coaching?
It's all about content. It's all about content.
Okay, thank you.
We put it out there. You make it, we put it out there, and it finds its own audience, I think.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and Youth Commission, Alicia.
Good afternoon. The only thing that I'd like to add that I did not include in the report is that with the summer camp registrations, we do offer the opportunity for folks to apply for financial assistance. The deadline for submitting those applications is this Friday. And then subsequently, Allie, who is Director of Human Services, and I meet, and using state guidelines, we make determinations and issue awards based on those recommendations and guidelines come mid-May.
Any questions for Alicia?
I was just, the Camp Oxford Ridge, is that at the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And this year, every year there's a little bit of jockeying as to which program gets which school. And Hinley is taken offline this year due to a capital project that's taking place. So the YMCA became temporarily homeless. So we negotiated that they would have Royal for this summer. And I'm operating 2 programs at Oxford School, which I did a few years ago. It's 2, they have different schedules, different staffing, different field trips. It's helpful that they're together in that sometimes when we have entertainers or workshops, I would bus one camp to the other, but that doesn't happen regularly enough to consolidate them as one camp. Plus, kids that are going in first grade, there is a world of difference in the maturity level between a kid who has just completed kindergarten and one who has completed first grade. And for those who are confused, kids, some parents will register their child because they've completed a year of kindergarten, but they are not successfully transitioning into first grade. You have to be entering first grade to be able to register for camp.
Your returning staff, is that the extent of your staff?
No.
Okay.
No.
So how many, when you talk about directors and counselors, how many?
So there are 7 directors, and I unfortunately always have to do the math, 31 counselors. And then I'll be interviewing for counselors in training this week. I've been doing the interviewing process for counselors over the past month. We have a lot of great candidates. The need for new staff is low, which is great, in that, I've got a lot of really qualified returning staff.
So 31 counselors and then CITs on
Yes.
top of that, about
Yeah.
how many?
Any more than 6 is not ideal.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Lisa? Good luck with your busy season.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends our quarterly department heads meeting. Everybody enjoy your day. We're going to move directly into our Board of Selectmen's meeting, so we appreciate you using quietly.
I never did hear about the chief's crime modeling system. It was RTM. What was that third word?
RT blank.
She said it twice, and I didn't
I
hear
asked,
either
why I
one.
asked him again.
Okay.
I know it's RTM, but
Yeah. I may have done this. I did.
Donna, Jen. Donna, Jen. Take it outside. Thank you.
Okay, Channel 79, we're going to move into our Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, April 23rd to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one here, we will move right on from public comment. And in the interest of time, I will waive my first Selectmen's report and will report to you at our next Board of Selectmen meeting. There's nothing notable to report this morning anyway.
Okay.
Town Administrator's report.
Nothing today.
Okay. Great. Moving into new business, discuss and take action on the annual Push and Pull Parade, which is scheduled, as always, for July 4th. You can see the report from the VFW. Sherrod Sammy and his family are always great to organize this event. It's a beloved event here in Darien, the 15th annual Push and Pull Parade. If anybody has any questions about this, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2019 Push and Pull Parade. Pam? May I have a second? Susan? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Great. Okay, thank you. Next order of business, discuss and take action to approve a bond authorization for the Oxridge Elementary School. And I'm going to turn this to Kate to give us some detail on the recommendation to approve an appropriation of $3 million to cover some upfront costs for the Oxridge Elementary School project.
Right, so we're at a point where the committee needs some money. They're currently interviewing architects. They chose 6 semifinalists out of, I think we had 12 all total that submitted proposals. We're also engaging or about to engage in several studies that need to be done in advance of the project, things like hazardous material testing in the existing school, groundwater testing, a traffic study, all things that need to be done in preparation for the design of the school, but also things to be done in preparation for any application for state funding. So I sized the request based on the high end of the architecture proposals and the various studies that we need to do, and putting in an allowance for some preliminary fees to a construction manager. We do have an RFQ out right now for construction manager. It's possible that by the time this makes its way to the RTM and the Board of Finance that we might ask for a little bit less, depending on the architecture firm that is chosen. But the $3 million will cover all those services we need right now. This is nowhere near what we're going to need for the project.
Yeah.
You could see us back here before the end of May asking for funding for the project, depending on how the committee decides to approach state grant funding.
I don't know, Kip, if you want to make any comments on this. I think that because we're on TV, we should elaborate a little bit more on the kinds of studies that will be funded with this $3 million. We have traffic
Study, a survey of the property, like I said, the hazardous materials testing at the school, groundwater study. We are also looking to hire somebody possibly to assist us with the grant filing process. Is that, I think that was...
And then if we hire, in our process of getting a construction manager,
yes,
we should have some funds set aside for that person to do some preliminary work, because they're going to be our representative, basically, like we did with the garage.
Like we did with the garage. And we also have, when we get to the 2 finalists, or 2 to 3 finalists of the architects, 2 or 3 finalists, we are going to pay them a preliminary fee to do a concept design,
right,
to assist the building committee in its choice. So that's also in there.
And we have we don't have the exact number that we're going to award to each of the finalists, but if you use a rough number of like $10,000 to actually put together, we're talking about a real presentation. And we think that's fair, because otherwise they're going to be working, hopefully they're going to get the project, but we would expect 3D presentations and everything like that as our final look at the architect. So $3 million is probably generous, but it's giving us a cushion to know that we could work with them without having to go back and ask for more money, at least to get to the point where we have an architect and construction manager hired and on board, and possibly filing with the state.
So just a point of clarification, Kate, you said that the survey of the property would be included in this. We already funded the survey of the property, correct?
We funded the survey of the property, but the bond authorization would allow us to reimburse us for that.
Right.
Okay.
It's captured within the 60-day limit.
And I'm not familiar with the concept of paying a fee to finalists to come up with a conceptual design. Is that...
Not something I've ever seen done before, but this is also a different process. I don't think they've ever asked for that level of detail in the proposal. You didn't get a sense of what the architect was going to design for you until you hired them.
Yep.
So this allows the committee to look at what the architect is proposing, what they would suggest, and have an idea if they've hit on what we want, what their style is.
Very interesting idea.
And we think that the committee thought that the result might well be that the ideas that will be given to us, there might be some great ideas across the board that can be adapted to the final, which we thought was, and if you're paying somebody, we thought maybe $10,000, we don't have an exact number, but for each presentation, that's a fair amount for asking to do a couple of weeks of work with a CAD and all that kind of thing. Real work, not just sort of give me a quick sketch.
Yeah, not a sketch.
And
have you spoken to any of the firms that you're interviewing to see if that's an acceptable concept for them, that they would be willing to be hired by a fee?
I'd have to turn it over to Diane Boston, who's leading the charge on this.
Okay.
But it was put in the RFP. That was our intent.
It was in the RFP, so yeah, they could read that. We didn't put the number in.
We didn't put a number in it.
We just said there'll be reimbursement for the final presentation.
Okay. And this appropriation and the expenditure of funds, does that just sort of hang out there until we bond the ultimate full appropriation for the construction of the project itself?
When you say hang out there,
or do we consider, would we bond this $3 million before we bond for the full project?
That would be up to the Board of Finance.
Okay.
Once the appropriation and authorization is in place, we can spend it. When they choose to bond it, is up to them. But they'll look at things like our cash flow and what other issues we have and all the arbitrage regulations. So I would assume, for purposes of cost, that any of the bonding that they're hoping to have authorized at the next RTM meeting will probably go together.
Okay.
Because you have timing, times when you have to get it spent by, unless you're under $5 million for the whole year. So we're not going to be under $5 million for the whole year.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Kate, one question, and I think it's really more for the public, but, so if we approve this.
Yep.
Then take me through the next couple of steps after this.
If we approve this, all this gets us is through the architecture phase. Then there's a lot of other things that have to happen, and this project is going to be different from how we did the Public Works Garage, in all likelihood. And that's driven by the state, okay? If you recall, with the Public Works Garage, we went and bid the project out. We had 3 estimates done, one by the architect, one by an independent estimator, and one by the construction manager. So we had an idea of what the cost would be, then we bid it out. Then we asked for the financing. The state won't let us do that if we want to have grant money. And based on the numbers we're hearing, the grant money available to us could be upwards of $3 million. We don't feel that that's something we should just poo-poo, But that could change if we don't get into this June cycle. So that's why I'm saying, we could be back sometime in May asking for a big chunk of money to do the whole project. That would have to be a real estimate, a real, not with a lot of firmness to it. It would have to be our best estimate to get things filed, because the local funding has to be in place before you can ask the state to approve your grants. If we don't do it this June, our next opportunity with the state is June 2020.
Right.
So we'll basically lose a year.
Yes.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit more for public transparency in terms of what the state requires and what they disallow you from doing if we don't file in June, the things that we're not allowed to do related to this project?
Okay. In order, if you're going to, you have once a year that you could, filing deadline or ask for the grant, and that's June 30th. And in order to do that, you have to have your educational specs, your enrollment projections, you have to have
architect.
You have to have a conceptual drawing, which is the lowest, it's the first stage of your school design. And then you have to have funding authorized by your local board, which is in our case the RTM. So that means you'd have to go to the RTM with a number based upon a conceptual drawing, no bids, not even design development, which is a much more, the steps are conceptual drawings, design development, and then construction drawings from which you then get subcontractor bids. So you're going to go in with the lowest level or the earliest level of drawings. And therefore you're making an estimate. And then you say, okay, I have to have all this to be able to go to the state by June 30th. If I miss that, I have to get in line next year. What you can't do until the state comes back and says, we've awarded you a grant of this amount, you can't go out and start bidding the project. You can start, after that, you can start doing your design development and then maybe even get your construction drawings. But meanwhile, you don't know whether you can't go out and bid it. You can't go take any steps that would get you final numbers that would say, here, like we did with the garage. The question will be, okay, well, how much will we get from the state? It's not clear. For example, let's just say we have a 90,000 square foot building, which is roughly what the ed specs are talking about. Although last night we heard some architects say, well, it might have to be 101. Mm-hmm. Others said it could be less. Those are kind of the concepts they're throwing out at us. The state says for a qualified educational space, which does not include hallways, does not include circulation areas, we'll grant you $375 a square foot maximum cost. Well, down here the cost of building is much higher. They don't care. So first of all, what you're going to get, even if you build it, is going to be less than your total cost.
And that's what they'll because when we refer to the state grant percentage, it's a percentage of our eligible costs. So what Kip's referring to is
eligibility.
Say it was a 100 square foot building, they're only, if our cost is 400 a square foot, that's 40 million, but they're only going to reimburse on 375 a square foot, and then only a percentage of that.
Right. So you get through the eligibility things, and then you say, well, okay, what percentage of those costs are we going to get back? And that's all based upon a grading of all the towns in the state. Currently, our reimbursement rate, according to the architects, is 11.7%.
10.7.
10.7, excuse me. And then maybe some extras because of the early learning facility. Not clear what that exactly is.
I think that was up to 5%.
Up to
more.
5, but
Yeah.
not clear exactly what it might be.
Right, they weren't clear on what it would actually mean.
If we meet this year's deadline, and the two of the members of the committee did go meet with people at the state, the Office of Grant and Construction, they're very much encouraging us to get in now before the deadline, because they said, according to what we're hearing, all of this is going to change. It's going to be much more restrictive. There'll be less money available. Our percentage might go down to as low as 5%. The debt diet that Governor Lamont's talked about may mean there's going to be less bonding, therefore less money available, and therefore maybe towns like ours would get zero.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through all this process, wait till November, 8 November to hear you got nothing. So it's really kind of, we're trying to work through all of these different variations to see whether we want to make that deadline of June 30th this year in order to meet what is the larger possibility. There's a cost to doing that. There's an administrative cost, not just for doing that up front, but for maintaining all of your reports throughout the entire project and when you get your money, your grant money. We're trying to study all that. We're hiring somebody to help us do that. Certainly the people in the state office are anxious for us to do it, to apply. We're still thinking about it.
You can see how the projects, in the past, how we've had issues with coming up with a number,
Yeah,
and then the project, having to go back for more or cut things out because reality, isn't anywhere near that number. And it's a really difficult position to be in because, one of the things we've talked about is maybe we ask for more than we think we could possibly need in order to make sure that we don't get caught in that. Or do we prep the RTM that, well, here's what we're asking for, but it's just a guess and we might be back another time for a second,
It's nuts, but that's the way the state system works. It forces the towns to have what's called swag.
Yeah.
And for those of us who know
I
what
didn't want to
swag
use
is.
that word, but.
Swag, well, it's about, really that's what you're doing. And for the RTM then to say, well, you can't, you're spending too much money. We don't know. It might be a lot less. And we would obviously try to be conservative and estimate more than we think we're going to have to spend. And schools are very complex. A lot of program design, adjacencies, early learning especially has its own mix. The new security rules, which apparently are statewide and everything else. There's just lots going on. Ballistic windows cost a fortune.
Yep.
Really.
And that's part of
So
the new
Kip,
plan.
will it be the building committee's decision whether we go forward with this? Where does the Board of Finance fit into any decision-making, or the Board of Selectmen and or the RTM?
Well, first of all, the chairman of the Board of Finance is on the building committee. So we don't have to communicate hard with the finance committee to tell them where we're at. But the point is, we're looking to hire somebody to specifically help us through this decision process of whether we make that June 30th deadline.
Yeah.
But the caution is that we're going to have to stand up in front of the RTM if we do that and say, guys, here's a number which is basically swag, which is crazy.
The other factor that I think we forgot to mention, I don't know if it's happened yet, but the state actually has to come down and look at the building, the existing building, and opine as to whether they will approve a new building or say, we're only going to give you grant money if you renovate.
Right.
And the renovation we'd have to keep 55% of the existing building.
That could make our decision
It could
much
make it
easier,
really
so
easy,
we're
yeah.
hoping that will happen in the near term.
We've
right?
invited them down. They haven't responded as to a date yet, but
Okay.
One of the co-chair, Duke Denise, asked them, given them a couple of dates to come on down.
But irrelevant to the decision, this
We need this to move any further, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if we approve this today, then does it go to?
I notified Seth last night that you sent him an email last night that it was on your agenda for today, that, I anticipated that you would approve it, and we wanted to have it on the May agenda for the RTM.
I guess also just having lived through so many of these different schools construction projects, from a distance, obviously, but, I think that members of the RTM will certainly want as much input and as much information as possible, and it sounds like no one has a lot of, and we might not have a lot of the information that they normally are looking for.
Correct.
Whether it's even with this, I mean, I think we want to make sure that, I'll use the word respect, that's not probably the right word for the RTM, and the respect of the process, just so this goes on a smooth process overall. Because if anyone thinks that it's being rushed, we're up against a deadline, so it needs to be expedited, but at the same point, the RTM needs to feel a level of comfort, which sometimes is a tricky, difficult
So
situation.
I would say at the very least, for the process moving forward with this $3 million, we should have a memo put together of the various costs that are included.
Yeah, and I will work on the executive memo,
Okay.
or executive summary for the RTM when this is all done, after you, today.
All right, any further questions on this potential appropriation for $3 million? So I'll read it's a resolution appropriating $3 million for the planning, design, and construction of a new elementary school in the town of Darien, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $3 million to meet said appropriation. May I have a motion to approve that? Mark? May I have a second? Susan? All those in favor? Great, thank you very much. I think we need an ordinance against leaf blowers.
I think residents would agree with you.
I've heard of a place that does that.
Exactly. Okay, we have a couple of meeting minutes, regular meeting and special meeting of April 15th. What am I looking at here? Regular meeting of April 8th, special meeting of April 15th, sorry.
Correction.
Yes,
Mark Thorne is M-A-R-C, Thorne,
yes it is.
at the top of the page.
I am so sorry.
And on page 4, just a moment. How's the numbering of these? Paragraph C of new business, which begins on top of page 4. Mr. Thorne said he was very concerned about the impact on local roads, period. Strike out because
Okay.
his home is close to the post road.
Strike out the whole thing, or just strike out the word because?
Strike out the word because.
And start a new sentence with his home is close to the post road.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think that more closely reflects. I don't want the town to do something for my convenience.
Got it.
That's not my point.
Any other corrections to the April 8th minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended. Pam? I have a second. Mark? All those in favor? And,
I wasn't there.
yep, so
Abstain.
abstain. Okay, special meeting minutes of April 15th.
So moved.
Mark can move them.
Okay, Mark Thorne moves, Susan Marks second. All those in favor? Great, thank you.
Was everybody at that meeting?
Yes.
Pam was not.
Pam was not.
Got it.
So Pam
Yeah.
abstains.
Abstain.
Okay. All right. We have some appointments today, and I'm going to read them all so we can vote once. Reappoint Jeff Ball to the Youth Commission for a term ending on 3/31/22. Reappoint Sean Brown to the ARB, Architectural Review Board, as an alternate for a term ending on 6/30/21. Reappoint Allison Hughes to the Architectural Review Board for a term ending 6/30/21. Reappoint Robert Holub to the Monuments and Ceremonies Commission for a term ending 11/30/21. And this is an appointment to appoint Severio Sam Bacuzzi as a special constable for a term ending on May 5th, 2021. Sam is, as you heard this morning, retiring from service from the Darien Police Department.
Oh, okay.
He's been interviewed by the Tokenique Association, and they would like to hire him as their special constable. So we have to approve his appointment to that position. So before we take a vote, does anyone have any additional questions about Sam's appointment as a special constable for the Tokenique Association? We've had many other officers flow into that job.
They're almost always retired
Yeah.
Darien officers. You see them, they retire one day and they start there the next.
Yes. And we have a letter from the police department recommending that we approve his appointment. Okay. So if there are no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion to approve these reappointments and Sam's appointment.
So moved.
Kip, may I have a second? Mark? All those in favor? Okay, great. Agenda review.
I would like to be updated on what's going on with Norotan Heights Railroad Station and related Norotan Heights.
Meaning the commercial redevelopments? Or
No,
just the,
meaning what town activity is
So you want-
involved
basically you want an update
with
from Ed.
accessibility and
Yeah. The access study
Yeah.
and what's coming of that. Okay.
Jamie, also, maybe we could reschedule Captain Anderson for the toll discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's not critical for the next meeting, but certainly.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see when he's available.
Okay. Anything else? Great. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Susan, may I have a second? Pam? All those in favor? Okay, thank you.